Welcome to The Author Next Door,
where we talk writing, publishing, and the business behind the books.
This podcast is for writers who are a few steps ahead into the journey. Maybe you've published, maybe you're planning what's next, and you realize the questions aren't getting easier. They're just getting more interesting.
Sometimes it's just our fabulous selves. Sometimes we bring friends to the table, but it's always lived experience and information you can use.
So pull up a chair. The conversation starts now.
Welcome to episode 57. I'm Angela Haas, and I'm here with my co-host, Holly Lyne, because unfortunately, lovely Cassie is still out of the office for this episode. This month, we're talking all about romance, and today I wanted to talk about the difference between the romance genres and maybe some tips for writing them, some things that we're noticing in the market, and how you can have a novel that readers won't want to put down. So, Holly, thank you for jumping in for this really fun talk.
No problem.
Yeah. So, to get started, I wanted to read some stats. And this was actually in the K-Lytics report. It says 55% of the most sold Kindle books of 2025 were romance titles. And that's continuing the domination from 2024. The vast majority of authors behind these top-selling romance titles are self-published, 58%. And then looks like the tropes that Amazon is now recognizing as keywords, fake dating, friends to lovers, which I think is huge because I have that.
Mm-hmm.
When it's not enemies to lovers, rivals to lovers, but friends to lovers, now they're recognizing that, and second chances.
Mm-hmm.
36% of all core romance submarkets show favorable sales to competition ratios and fall into the K-Lytics categorization of hot sells, hot niches, or hot mainstreams. So just the search interest on Google romance books doubled over the past 5 years. Let's talk about that. What do you think about all that? Is any of that surprise you?
No, none of it surprised me. I think it's part of a growing trend that I've seen, and I've been an indie author for over 10 years, so I've seen some changes over that time. And romance has been becoming increasingly dominant, really, over the last 5 years, I would say. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me. But at the same time, especially the 55% of all of the
Right.
top books, that was a slightly mind-blowing statistic.
Right. Yeah. And the fact that it's steady but kind of slowly rising, because I always see trends as like, they kind of come and go, right? But why do you think romance is so popular? Why do you think it's speaking to everyone? Because truly, I think depending on what genre you like, there's still romance for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's probably largely down to social media and women talking to each other and recommending books to each other. I think that's the main driver.
You know what? That's a great point, because how did we find books before social media? We just went to the library, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I got Reader's Digest magazine, and, they featured books, but
Yeah. I just did the old-fashioned thing of browsing bookshops.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I lived in Barnes& and Noble in college, but I still don't remember. I felt like romance was always towards the back, or it was somewhere, like it was always thriller on the front, or just the New York Times bestselling on the front. And I just don't remember romance being featured. But now if you go into Barnes and Noble, they've got a table just all romance, and like 3 tables of different kinds of romance, whether it's romantasy or contemporary. They've got rom-coms. And I was like, wow, this is different.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So, okay, friends, listeners, romance is here to stay for anyone thinking about writing it. And I never thought I could write romance. I was like, I don't know how to do it. I like to write fight scenes. I like spaceships. I don't, you know, but I think if you do your research, you have to start reading romance voraciously with whatever you want to write. You can write romance, but let's talk about the different genres, right?
Mm.
So tell us about the romance you write, because you are writing romance, but super secret pen name, but still.
Yeah, two super secret pen names now. Yeah, and 5 years ago, I would never have imagined that this would be the case.
Right.
Even 2 years ago, actually. I honestly, there was an element, if you can't beat them, join them.
Hmm.
um, yeah, and I found that I actually love it.
Right? I mean, I was hard on romance. I really wasn't. I had a really wrong perception of romance. I'm sure I even posted something somewhere. There's probably an old, well, I never really used Twitter, but there's probably an old Facebook post or something where it was like, I don't like mushy romance, and I don't. Like the notebook style romance, no shade, it has a place, it's for other people. I thought that's what romance was. Sort of like the way it was in those kinds of movies where the couple runs to each other and the ocean swells and the timpani in the background is like overselling the emotion. And I'm like, snooze fest. So that's when I had a wrong stereotype of romance. And only until I started reading romance and actually was first drawn to them by their covers, and then I'd read the blurb and then I'd be like, okay. And I'm like, wow, this is different from, and we've been talking about this all month, the romance that I grew up with, but even the wrong perception I had of romance. And then when I started writing it the way I wanted to, the things that I thought were romantic, then I was like, okay, I like this.
Yeah. I've always been the sort of writer where I write the kinds of things I want to read, and that hasn't changed. And so the kind of romance I write is not, wishy-washy. It's not superficial. I try to write, even with my short novellas, I try to write complex characters and interesting themes. And I work quite hard to make those books more than just a surface level romance.
Yeah. Well, and I've read yours and they hook you instantly though. So let's talk about the different genres though, the subgenres. Um, so this is from Readsy. They did some market analysis and looks like contemporary romance is the largest and most enduring category. But to me, I feel like that can be so many things, like romantic comedies, small town settings, workplace romance.
Sports romance would be included in
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is what you're doing, but yours has an edge. I think
Yeah, it
it's
does.
glamorous. It's glam sports romance, you know. I'm doing small town western, but I did romantic comedy. And I feel like I don't know. I feel like there's readers for everyone, but don't you think that romance readers know what they want? And you can't stray too far out of those lanes, right?
Yeah. Which is
Yeah.
frustrating for me.
Right.
That's what I struggle with. Yeah. But yeah, I think there are certain core things that as long as you do, you'll be fine. Like that you have to deliver the happily ever after. That's
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
non-negotiable. And there's a certain pacing, no matter what length the book is. You need to have your in any other genre it would be the inciting incident. In romance it's the meet cute. That has to be sort of within the first 10% of the book. And then you
Right.
have to have that midpoint crisis in the relationship, or the culmination of the consummation of the relationship has to be at
Right.
the midpoint. And then you have the fallout and some struggles that they have to overcome, and then the final resolution. So you have to meet those expectations. But I think there's a lot of flexibility within that, with what you can do with characters and themes and ideas, and hopefully a little bit of pushing the boundaries and trying new things and lacing in other genres, you know, a little bit of suspense, a bit of thriller, whatever it is that takes your fancy. I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of scope for, you know, creativity.
Yeah, I think though it depends on the subgenre. I think like if you're writing romantic comedy, I feel like you can't trailblaze on that one. It has to be banter, and that's number one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of the ones I've read are a little like there's a little not slapstick, that's an old term for like physical comedy, but it's more like things go wrong and we
Mm.
laugh about it and somehow they fall in love along the way.
Mm.
When I tried to add too much feeling in my romantic comedy, some readers pushed back on that. They thought
Mm.
it was too dramatic. And I was like, but wait, we can be funny and dramatic, right? And it was like, no.
No.
I mean, I'm sticking with it, but it was interesting to see some of the reviews that were more 3-star because they wanted it to be lighter. I don't totally do that.
Yeah. But then it's just a case of positioning, isn't it? It's how you choose to market the book, the types of readers you try to attract. And you have,
Yeah.
you know, a certain amount of power in that. That's within your control.
Yeah. So how are you tell us how you're doing that because you've been in the game a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think I'm still trying to figure out is how do I find my people? It takes a while, doesn't it?
Yeah, it can. And honestly, with the new pen name that I've just started, I'm figuring that out. I haven't found the people yet. And I'm apprehensive. The first book comes out in a couple of weeks and I'm like, oh God, is it going to sell? You know? So it's scary, even when you've been doing it a long time, especially if you are, you know, sort of more of a trailblazer and pushing boundaries, which I am. But with my other pen name, I found my people very quickly, and I think it's because I was writing in a really hot niche.
Okay.
So that's dark romance, dark paranormal romance. So straight away, it was really obvious that I had to use TikTok for marketing. And there are very popular hashtags. There are whole like communities and book clubs all focused on that niche. So I just joined them and started chatting to people. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it was incredibly easy to find people. So yeah, I think it depends. It depends on your niche and how to market your books are.
Yeah. Let's talk about dark romance for a second
Mm-hmm.
because I read a dark mafia romance by Gabrielle Sands.
Mm.
And I actually like kind of devoured it. It was weird. I was like, okay, whatever. And then I'm like, I'm always such a brat when I try something new because sometimes when something is so popular, I resist it because I'm so bratty because
Mm.
like I don't want to just jump on things that are so popular for everyone. Like
Right.
Billionaire Mafia is still going strong, but I'm like, I'll never do that. Now I'm thinking about it, of course. But what surprised me is how different the emotional tone was. And obviously, the intimate scenes are completely different,
Mm-hmm.
where not as much of a focus on consent protection like I've seen in contemporary romance
Mm-hmm.
intimate scenes. And
Yeah.
some might say that some is like kind of, a little rougher, or it's because someone's been kidnapped, or and now they're in someone's possession, and or someone's running from someone and they fall in love with the baddie who's actually good inside. But there still isn't so much emotion involved. And there isn't a lot of like her cheeks heated and all the other body language modifiers. At least the ones I've read, it's just like
Yeah.
gets to right to the heart of it.
I
Talk to
think
me
it
about
probably
writing dark romance. Yeah.
sure. I think it probably varies. I think I mean all romance is a fantasy, right? But there are different kinds of fantasies for different people and the same person but in different moods. And what dark romance does, it taps into those fantasies that we probably wouldn't tell people that we have, things that we might feel shame about or that are just taboo, so we don't talk about them openly. And anything sort of contractual or, you know, anything that would break the fantasy, like contraception or, a
Right.
conversation about consent, it breaks the fantasy. If your fantasy is being kidnapped by a masked man, you don't want to, stop. Just hang on a minute. The fantasy is that you are taken. So I think that's why those conversations don't happen, or happen in a different way. You might get internal monologue. You might have the female main character being like, it's like, God, I'm on the pill. Or,
Right. Yeah.
it may come up in another way without them having a conversation. So the reader has the reassurance, it's okay, this is safe, but there is still that element of wish fulfillment and fantasy fulfillment.
Yeah. And I feel like what I read too was more about, it's clear the characters have instant desire, even though they may push back, or she punches him in the face and then kisses him 5 pages later. But there's some things rom-com readers are rigid about. I think there still is some things dark romance readers are rigid about, because I don't think I could get away with a lower spice level and still call it dark romance, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you have to go all in on spice. I think that is a standard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are definitely, I see people complaining about dark romance books that are, great plot, but just not enough spice. There is definitely an expectation of at least 4 chilies for dark romance. And I have a book, it was actually my second book, which the opening page has an explicit scene, and it basically doesn't stop until the very end. It's I don't know if I think I can say this, but it's been described as a bang fest. And then, so I have one of those. But yeah, and I did want to pull you up on something there you said about it's not so much about the emotions. I think it absolutely is, just in a different way. It's not soft emotion, it's quite heavy emotions. And I think the best dark romance deals with, the emotional baggage that many of us have, especially trauma. A lot of it is about healing trauma. It's about confronting the things that have, wrecked us emotionally, and having a safe way to explore those feelings. So I think, it's absolutely about emotion. And if that isn't there, then it's not interesting to me, certainly. And I think that's true of most dark romance readers.
Yeah, I'm glad you put it that way. That makes complete sense to me now, because it's just not the same emotion that I've been writing. If I'm describing death of a parent in a small town romance, it's not gruesome. It's not heavy. It's maybe they died in a car accident. In the mafia one, it's okay, my parents were burned in a house fire set by a rival mafia clan. That's heavy. Yeah, that would be hard for a child. So the emotion is just different. And I think the only way to learn how to write in these different genres is just to start reading, It's just, I think if I ever did a dark romance, I think I would have to absolutely have a pen name. And I never thought I would do a pen name, but you're right. It's what your fantasy, it starts there. And then you put that into a plot, still matching reader expectations. But dark romance, and maybe it's so popular because it does give people a green light to put this out there in the world, and then have other people say, I love this.
Yeah.
I am obsessed with this book. Like, what's that? Like the Lights Out author? Doesn't that have some really taboo themes?
It does. I'm really glad you brought that up, actually. It's Lights Out by Navessa Allen. That's one of my favourite reads last year. It is dark romance, but it's also a comedy. It's a dark rom-com. So where we were talking about that, trailblazing and pushing boundaries, that book absolutely does that. And so a lot of dark romance readers didn't like it because it was too funny. The couple have a lot of banter. The male character's inner monologue is hilarious. It's one of the funniest things I've read since Bridget Jones' Diary. So good. But yes, it is dark in that he stalks her, and there's a scene with a knife. If you know, you know.
I'm afraid.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely got dark themes, and there is, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, there's a subplot there. the non-romantic plot element is quite dark.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's also hilarious. It's genius.
I wonder if that works because even when you're writing like action adventure, even after a fight scene, you need the heroes to be like in the cafe decompressing. And that's where they share some light, humorous moments. It gives people some breathing room. If you're taking us to a really dark place, adding a little humor brings us up so it's not like constantly. And some people probably like to go dark in their reading, stay dark, and then never come up from air. But maybe that appealed to a whole new subset by combining that humor and then giving the reader a little breathing space.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah.
I think that's why it's achieved more mainstream success, that particular book. But interestingly, the sequel, not liked by most people, and I couldn't get into it. I only gave it a chapter, and I was just like, I don't like these characters. I just don't want to read it. So,
Wow.
yeah.
And why did it not appeal to you? Just for people like learning,
Yeah, well, it's just personal things for me, just things I
Yeah.
don't like.
Yeah.
I didn't love the female main character as a sex worker, and I was just like, nah,
Yeah.
nah, not for me.
I'm surprised how much I've liked mafia romance. Maybe because I don't know. I mean, I'm Italian. It's not like I have mafia family members, but I think just culturally, I can see some similar things that I like. And so I might try to tackle that sometime, but definitely under a pen name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think a pen name just protects you a little bit. It's certainly why I've made that choice. I prefer to keep myself, that people know me, separate from my author persona because of the type of books that I'm writing. It's, but so I just have a little story to share. My new book, my mum is desperate to read it.
Gosh.
She really, really wants to read it. So we were chatting today and I was like, well, I have my proof copy and you literally can't do anything with a proof copy. It's got that band around the cover. I've got a stack of them, proof copies of all the books I've ever published. And I was like, I've got nothing else I can do with it. I could redact it. So I've been going through it with a black pen.
Are you serious? Oh my goodness.
And I'm just gonna show you a page. I've been using sticky notes. So I've got this page backwards, but the sticky notes say, you get the idea.
That's perfect. Oh my gosh. I should do that for my mother when she reads mine, just as like a, whoa,
Yeah.
let's skip ahead. You got it. There's some kissing. There's kissing. Next page.
I've got one page that's like folded over and a note on it saying snuggles.
I love that. That's a great idea for some people might be a little more sensitive. Yeah.
But like, I don't want my mum looking at me differently,
Well, no, because I don't want my mother thinking, well, I mean, it is my fantasies on the page to some extent. However, I'm still writing them in a way that I know readers want to read those scenes. Sometimes the sex scenes are hardest for me to write because it's got to be specific flow, good timing. I wrote one and my alpha reader was like, okay, so they were kissing and then they went to here and there was nothing in between. I was like, oh, you're right. I kind of skipped some steps. I didn't even describe the clothes coming off. Okay. Whoops. So I kind of rushed that one. I have to really get coached and then keep going back through to make sure I didn't say her cheeks heated 50 times in one scene. There's other adjectives, there's other internal sensations. I had a hard time getting that right. So when my mother was like, Angela, I was like, no, you don't understand. This took me forever. This was not easy for me to do. Yeah, but I think doing a little redaction in those proof copies, that's the greatest thing. That's the greatest idea. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So, what do you get out of writing romance? Why do you like it now?
I don't think I can say.
Okay. Yep, that's an After Dark episode. All right.
Yeah.
She's writing dark. Okay. I'll answer that one. I like the challenge of it actually. It's not like for me, especially with each new couple, like how do you make your couple stand out each time? How do you
Mhm.
make them different? How do they
Mhm.
go through a different journey, were they in love before? Is this the first time? Getting that meet cute right. It's a really great new adventure and it's a challenge that I've liked reading. But I have said before that it's not always easy, but I do think, especially my romance that takes places in places I've lived, it's so much easier to create that world building.
Mm.
Even though you need more world building in romantasy than you do romantic comedy, but I still like to create an immersive world. And it was so much easier in my rom-com to talk about a restaurant that I had eaten in. I knew
Mm.
exactly how it smelled, how it felt. I know what the menu is and what you should order. And that was nice to have some of that. And actually, my Scottsdale one is selling really well in the local Scottsdale bookshop because it's like a little travel guide.
Yeah.
I haven't read a lot of romantasy or paranormal.
I have no interest in romantasy. And so, you were saying about like popular books that you just don't want to touch. I'm like that. Like Fourth Wing, nope, not interested. Sarah J. Maas, don't care. No, no, don't want to. Interestingly, another of my favorite reads from last year was One Dark Window, which is part of the Shepherd King duology. Book 2 is great as well, but it's another one of those books that a lot of romance readers have gone, romantasy, yay. And then they read it and they're like, no. And
Right.
I'm like, I know why. I see why romance readers didn't like it. Dark fantasy readers loved it, like me. But yeah,
Gotcha.
I think, but paranormal. So for me, romantasy is strictly a fantasy setting, like a secondary world, dragons and, mythical creatures and historical, or vaguely
Magic
historical.
systems.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all of that. That's a completely different kettle of fish to paranormal romance, which is like urban fantasy, but with a heavy romance element. So that's where your shifters and vampires and all of that live. And they're completely different. They have different readerships, different expectations, and I don't think you can group them together.
Yeah, I think they're completely different. I definitely don't think I could write a romantasy. I've thought about it, but I would want it to be like A Knight's Tale. For me, what new world could you build that's not already been done by, like you were saying,
Hmm.
Rebecca Yarros and Sarah J. Maas? And then coming up with not only the romance beats, but making sure your magic system makes sense. There's quest in there, or, you've got to create this Game of Thrones family tree thing that's,
Mm-hmm.
the ones that I've read, I was like, this is so complicated. Not that I don't understand complicated things, but when I'm truly reading to escape, I don't want to keep track of whose house is and who's where, and this person needs to marry this person, and this person has a magical power that only comes out at 6 p.m. And I'm just like, ugh. But the trends are, seem to be solidly
Mm.
the contemporary romance. That seems to be the genre that's really steady because it reaches a large variety of reader. And I think the guardrails aren't as tight. Like, as we were saying, dark romance got to be for Chili's. You've got to. And I think that those rules are hard fast. If you're going to market in that, the ones that I want to write are more suspenseful. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe I would do romantic suspense, which I think still can have some of those mafia romance, dark romance elements,
Yeah, definitely.
but the spice isn't necessarily the thing,
Mm.
you know? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but for now, yeah, I'm sticking to my contemporary romance, and that seems to be easier for me to market.
Yeah, but we all have our
Yeah.
own strengths and preferences, don't we? And romance is such a broad church that for anyone who loves love, there's a space within the
Yeah.
romance genre.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, this is the time where we share like personal updates or anything. I don't have many updates, so I always share what's going viral on Threads. But do you have like stuff you're seeing out in the wild or personal updates, things you're working on, things you're excited about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to name my names, but
Right.
yeah, I have 3 books coming out in like the next 6 weeks. So I have my brand new pen name launching in a couple of weeks, and that's sports romance. And then my other pen name, it was an accident. I got diverted and I ended up writing another novella instead of the novel I was supposed to be writing.
Mm.
And then I finished that last week and immediately started writing the next one. So they're both coming out in March. So I am crazy busy doing all the writing and all the publishing all at once, but I'm loving it. I'm having an absolute whale of a time.
What if there's a listener who's like, I really want to read your books? Can they fill out a contact form or email you
They
or?
can email me, and if I know them and trust them, then
Okay. All right. All right. We won't market that then. If I was listening, I'd be like, I want in on this. I want to know. But that's
yeah,
just
I'm
me. I'm
sorry, I'm a
nosy.
tease.
She's a tease. We love it. Mystery. Okay. There's a couple things that happened on TikTok this week. Like sometimes I'll just open and it's like something's like blowing up and you have to dig to find the original conversation. One I did not find yet, but I think these situations both speak to some interesting conversations. And one was the New York Times article about, I think her name was Corey Hart, the woman who has published like 200 books, just all completely written with AI. Like it's just AI, copy and pasted, done. And the New York Times article, the author was uplifting this author who's just writing AI books. And then people started to find other articles with other publishers were like, if you're not using AI, you're going to be left behind. And the backlash around this blowing up, she puts out 200 titles. They don't have good reviews. But even so, that still crowds our market, right? It still puts my book lower, maybe in the search algorithm. And that's the thing that I hate about the flood of AI books. You can tell they've been written in AI. You can tell if you really read them, even the titles don't really make sense. But to me, my question is, does that take away some credibility about like chasing that title of being a New York Times bestselling author? Because seems like the New York Times, at least that author of that article, is pro AI.
Well, I think there's a few things to unpack there. For one, there's always been, like, discoverability has always been hard. And
Mhm.
when I was new, established, traditionally published authors were really worried about all the indies flooding the market with slop. And I'm
Right.
seeing a repeating pattern here.
Okay, that's a really good point.
Yeah. And Joanna Penn recently was talking about how it's not a tsunami of slop, it's actually potentially a tsunami of excellence. And because using AI as an author can really help you to improve as a writer. So, yeah, I think there's two sides to that. And AI is just a tool. Like Photoshop is a tool, Scrivener is a tool. It's how you use it and what you do with it it's
Yeah.
the intent behind the person using it that matters really. So yeah, but I try to stay out of the debates because I don't need it. I don't need that
Right.
stress.
No, I think I like getting involved for some reason because I just want to know. I like to know what people are talking about.
Mm.
But I just found it interesting. And Bloom Books was also the other publisher that was really pro AI. This is the future. Get in or get out of the way. And that rubbed a lot of indie authors the wrong way.
Mm.
But I did an experiment where I was just asking ChatGPT to do a side by side comparison of the characters I just outlined. So just visually needed a quick chart. But then it always offers to write scenes for you. And I'm like, no thanks. But I said yes one time. And the thing it spit out, if you really read the sentence a few times, it sounds very poetic, but it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. When you let just AI go, I don't know what it's doing. Yeah, copy and pasting that into your document.
I think if you're
Yeah,
going to
no.
use AI, you have to A, learn to prompt really well, and
Yes.
B, be prepared to edit.
Yeah. No. Yeah, there's no way. I feel better though because I used to try to make my documents so perfect. Not a single typo to be found, which we all want to strive for that. But I was killing myself every time someone found a comma out of place or an apostrophe, something small like the word TOO and it should have been TO. I'm not saying I want to just completely let those things go, but if there's one or two in the document, do I really need to go through the whole thing of reformatting and republishing? And maybe I'll leave some of those human elements in because you really know that I wrote it. Maybe if my sentence is slightly clunky, you know what? So is my brain. Like, does it have to be perfect? I think I've been chasing this unreal expectation of making them perfect in
Mm,
my eyes. And I think what's freeing about knowing that people are straight up publishing a book they didn't write at all is like, I'm going to just lean into mine are perfectly imperfect. And that's
Mhm.
how I'm going to sell them. Because a human was behind it in the writing and the editing. Yeah. Oh, and then the other thing on Threads was there was an author that, and I've seen this before, where you have a reviewer that leaves a 2-star or a 3-star or what they deem as a bad review, and the author goes after them.
yeah.
Authors, I'm telling you now, don't ever respond or go after a reviewer, even the trolls.
Mhm.
If I can live through a troll commenting on my superhero sci fi book, leaving the cheese emoji in the title and saying it was horrible waste of time, even though I win because they had a misspelled word in the review. So I was like, okay, well, you couldn't even spell this word. So I guess I don't have to listen to you. But it just was a really scathing, mean review. And it was a 1-star. And that's part of putting yourself out there, my friends. I mean, it never feels good, but that's just how it is. There's always going to be people like that. And you just have to you just lean into the good reviews or don't read your reviews. Do you read your reviews?
I do, yeah, because they're usually reassuring, even the bad
Yeah.
ones, because,
Yeah.
I can be like, okay, that wasn't for you. And it might give me a hint of what to improve on. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I do. But it depends on how thick your skin is.
Yeah. Mine wasn't at first. And now I'm like, whatever. But don't, in a public sphere, don't ever post them and attack them. You're probably going to get more negative reviews and even worse press. So it's just not worth your time or energy. But
Yeah.
that's the Threads report of the week. Okay. One last
Mhm.
thing to do.
Okay.
All right. This is our Lumatory conversation card. Where is the most interesting place you've ever visited?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think one of my favorite places I've ever visited is Avebury, which is a little village in the southwest of England. It has a huge stone circle, and the circle actually encompasses the village. The village has been built in the middle, and the stones are enormous, huge, huge stones, like 15 feet tall, 10 feet wide. They're enormous, and I used to go there quite a lot. And it's just got a vibe. It's got
Hmm.
a really, really lovely vibe. So yeah, that's one of my favorite places, and interesting in a sort of ooh.
That's awesome. I guess, I remember our trip to Jamaica, and that was interesting. I don't think I'll ever go back because it's like shocking the third world country of it. I've just never been to the Caribbeans, but I almost just had too much guilt. I feel like I need to be helping people when I'm here. I don't
Mhm.
think I can just enjoy laying out in the sun or going snorkeling because it's just like there was people like trying to rebuild their house with cinder blocks. And then we went to this plantation, which was such a heavy place. It was such a sad, the energy was so heavy and horrible history. And there was a wedding there. And I was like, I'm sorry, how can you get married here? This doesn't make sense to me at all. Okay, no, let's get out of here. Like, I just want to go home and I'm just going to donate to causes that help these people. But it was interesting because it's always marketed as this tropical paradise escape. And that's just not what I saw when I was there. Although, I mean, tourism helps in some ways, I guess.
Mm.
But that just didn't feel good to me. Yeah, it was interesting. So, okay, sorry, Debbie Downer. Let's end on a high note, which is it was so fun to have you here as a guest host.
Thank you.
I hope you had fun chatting about romance. So,
Absolutely.
yes, thank you everyone else for joining us today. Don't forget to give us a review and rating wherever you listen to the podcast. It really helps us with visibility. And if you're interested in catching the Author Next Door After Dark, where we really let our hair down, make sure to sign up for our newsletter so you get all that information. Until then, keep writing, keep doing, and we'll see ya.
We're so glad you joined us for this episode of The Author Next Door.
Writing is a long game, and it's one best played with community, curiosity, and a little grace for yourself along the way.
Keep showing up, keep learning, and keep telling stories only you can tell.
We'll see you next week, right here next door.